Okay, welcome to American Literature. Let's take a look at what we're doing in this course. Let's look at the syllabus. Right, okay. Time and place. You know the time, you know the place, you're already here. The textbook. I have mostly taken these texts from two books. The first one is the Norton Anthology of American Literature, 9th edition. It has, I think, 6 volumes. It's a huge book. It's like 5,000 pages. So I've chosen a few things for us to read. The second half of the semester, we're going to read a novel. How Can I Help You by Laura Sims. We're going to read the whole book. Grading 40% midterm, 60% final. So you want to make sure to work hard on those exams. Office hours. You can check my public schedule on the student information system. Okay, and then the course description. This is a 16-week course taught in English, as you can tell. And we're going to be reading some poetry, short stories, and a novel. You must do the assigned readings before class. The first week will be a lecture. That's now I'm lecturing. But starting next week, each week we'll have group discussions of open-ended questions, and then I will talk about your answers. So starting next week, when you come to class, you will divide into groups, and then I will give each group a discussion question. While you discuss, I will join each group to help you guys and to listen to your answers. So after every group is finished, I will come back and I will share each group's answers with the class, and I will also add some extra ideas or different perspectives. So when you come, you will start discussing. You will discuss the things that you have read before you came to class. So you have to do the assigned readings. And the exams will be open book, take home, online essay questions in English. I'll talk a bit more about that later today. Here's the schedule. Week 1, introduction. Week 2, we're going to be reading some poems. Week 3 is a story. Week 4, some more poems, but the poems in week 4 are harder. So when you try to read them, the experience of trying to read them will also be part of your learning experience. So if you don't understand it entirely, that's okay. Just try your best. Week 5 is a story, but it's actually a slightly longer story. Some people say that it's a novella, 中篇小说. So just to warn you, that's there. You'll have to spend more time reading that one. Week 6 is not from our textbook. I looked for this one from somewhere else because I think it is such a good and important story to read. Week 7, 2 slightly longer poems by the same author. Week 8, more poetry. And I will also introduce the midterm exam. It's a 1-week take-home exam, right? So week 9, you will still be in the middle of taking the exam. So we're not going to do anything too important. We're just going to watch a movie. Starting from week 10, we're going to begin reading the novel. Now, if you look at how much you have to read each week, The novel is about two women, Margot and Patricia, and each chapter is divided into at least two parts. One part told by Margot, one part told by Patricia. So, for example, week 11, when it says chapter 1 Patricia, that means you should read the Patricia section of chapter 1. For week 10, front matter is like the title, the dedication, the epigraph, things that appear before the first chapter. And chapter 1 has two sections told by Margot. So for that week, you should finish the second Margot section. So from the very beginning of the book to the end of the second Margot section. I'll remind you when we get into that unit. So we're going to finish the novel by week 15, and then I will introduce the final exam. And you will again have 1 week to do the final exam. Week 16, Christmas is a holiday, and 17, 18, self-study. Don't worry about that. So that's the schedule. You will notice that the second half of the semester, we're only going to be reading one thing. So if you start falling behind and you can't finish before the end of the final exam, it's going to be hard to take the final exam. So if you start falling behind during the second half, you must work harder to catch up. Okay, so when reading, especially some of the longer stories in the novel, I think it's really helpful if you take notes while you read. You can just like write down the key idea of each paragraph or something surprising that you want to remember. First of all, when you write, your brain will remember it better. Also, when you choose what you're going to write, the act of thinking and choosing will help you remember. And finally, because the exams are open book exams, if you take notes, then you don't have to go reread the whole thing. You can just look at your notes, and it's much faster to find the information that you want. So in addition to the course packet PDF, which I am looking at here, right, it has a very nice title page, syllabus. It has a few pages on American literary history. We're not going to spend time on this. This is for your reference. The first time I taught American literature, I tried to teach all of this history, which, we don't really have time. But it's also hard to pick and choose, like to make a shorter version. One reason is because our main textbook is so thick, it divides American literature into like 10 different sections, which it doesn't really make sense because American history is only 250 years. So that's like 20 years per section. That doesn't make sense. So instead, I'm now just going to introduce the history related to each thing that we read. And if you want a bigger picture of American literary history, you can look at these few pages. Okay, then we have the introductions to the authors of each text. Right, so the first week we have poems by these two people, Wallace Stevens and William Carlos Williams. And then we have the poems, right? It says Wallace Stevens. Right, and then the next unit, once again, author introductions, and then the text. And the second half of the course packet is just the novel. So because it has all of this stuff, the PDF is very, very big. The file size is very, very big. The page count is 201 pages. But in this class, the introductions, the literary history are not required reading. That is there if you want to read more about the author or the history. So the number of pages that you actually have to read is not 201 pages. So in addition to the course packet, if you want to take paper notes, which I think is a good idea, I have also prepared abridged paper handouts. Abridged means shortened. I have cut out some things. Basically, I have only left in the syllabus and the stuff that you're supposed to read. I took out all of the introductions. I took out all of the literary history. Now, this kind of creates a problem. If I say, turn to page 25, if you're using the PDF and you're using the paper handout, that's two different pages, right? So what I did was I added page numbers to the handout that match the PDF. So if you have a paper handout and the page number jumps, it feels like there are pages missing. Those are the parts that I took out. Okay, so don't worry. Therefore, whenever I say turn to page 25, everybody will turn to the same page. At the end of today, I will. Okay, here's the thing. It says that the handouts are available on request, but due to a printing error, I have printed 40 copies already. And because of this same printing error, originally I had planned to provide you with two handouts, one for the midterm exam and one for the final exam. But because of the printing error, they got combined into one really big handout. So at the end of class today, the handout is really big. There are 40 copies of this. I could not physically bring them to the classroom. So at the end of class today, if you want a handout, please follow me to my office and I will give you a copy. My office is really close. Don't worry about it. But if you're curious about what the handout looks like and feels like, during the break, you can come and flip through the handout. Okay, so that was the syllabus. It is here as an independent file because the course packet is way too big. The course plan is the page from the information system that nobody reads. Class emails. I'll try to give you the important information in class, but if I forget something and it's important, I will post it here and you will get an email from Moodle. Course packet, lecture recordings. I am recording this and I will post it on YouTube. So if you want to review, you can go here and find which week you want to watch again. The reason I posted to YouTube is because YouTube will automatically generate a searchable transcript, 逐字稿. So you don't have to watch the whole thing. You can open the transcript, search for the part that you want. You can click on it and the video will jump to that part. And this link will show you how that works. So the classes will be discussion and then lecture. I will not record the discussions. I will only record the lectures. Okay, next, we have to talk about AI. I'm sure you know that we cannot trust AI 100%, but if it's not 100%, how much can we trust AI? This is about GPT-4. We are currently on GPT-5, but to my understanding, it's not that much better. So the data for GPT-4, this chart shows the accuracy of its answers across different fields. So you have like education, technology, writing. The green is GPT-4. If you look very closely, you will see that in the best case, its accuracy rate is a little bit over 80%. In the worst case, its accuracy is a little bit under 70%, which means every time you ask ChatGPT a question, there is around a 20% chance that it will bullshit you. The problem for you is you don't know which 20%. So you can use AI to help you, but if you ask it for information, you must always double check. Now, these are the things that I hope you learn in a literature course. Literary history, the literary canon. The canon refers to the works that experts think are important or especially significant. So you should understand what are some of the important works and why they are important, the values of those works. Literary analysis. How do you make sense of a piece of literature? Literary appreciation. How do you decide whether something is good, fun, worth reading? Problem solving. When you can't understand something, how do you make that make sense? Motivation and resilience. When you want to give up, how do you keep going? Oral communication in your discussions, which I hope you will do in English. It's a good chance to practice oral communication. Synthesis is when you have to combine ideas from different group members. Critical thinking and position taking. This is when you have to decide, does this idea make sense? Argument from textual evidence. This is when you're taking the exam and you have to explain your answer using what we have read in class. And written expression. This is when you're actually taking the exam and you have to write in English. So I hope you learn this stuff from taking my class, but I'm not going to spend time teaching all of it. I'm only going to teach these things. So the literary history through introductory lectures when I introduce a new unit. The literary canon through the texts that I have chosen for us to read. We can always think about what is the importance of what we're reading. The literary analysis when you are discussing with your group members and you have to say, oh, I think this means this, or I think this means that. Oral communication, when I join your groups and you say something and I repeat it to you, I'm going to say that in a slightly different way that I think makes more sense. That's called recasting. So if you pay attention not just to what I say, but how I say it, it could help your oral communication skills. Critical thinking and position taking. If I guide you through a discussion, I'm also modeling or presenting an example of how to do a good discussion, how to say things that make sense, how to decide whether something makes sense or not. And finally, argument from textual evidence. When I come back to the front and I summarize your ideas, and then I extend your ideas, I push them forward, I will always try to connect those ideas to something in the text. Now, If you want to turn to AI, what can AI help you with? You can ask it for information, right? So that's literary history, literary canon. If you have trouble understanding something, you can also ask it to help you. That is problem solving. It can also organize information. It can help you decide whether information makes sense. And of course, you can ask it to help you clean up your grammar and spelling. So these are the things that both I and ChatGPT can help you with. Not a lot of overlap, right? Just literary history, literary canon, and critical thinking. If you use both of us, this is what we can do for you combined. And you will see that there are two items that I will not spend time on in class, and ChatGPT probably can't help you with either. The first one is literary appreciation. Why is something good? How do you enjoy a piece of literature? That's something that it takes experience, it takes time. It's something you will have to discover for yourself. The second one is motivation and resilience. When you want to give up, how do you keep going? You know what? I think ChatGPT can help you with this. If you tell it, I don't want to read this, but I have to read it for class. How do I keep going? It will probably give you some words of encouragement. But please do not send me an email at 3 a.m. asking, do I really have to read this? The answer is yes. I'm not going to answer you. Okay. Um, Now, some of you might be thinking, I came to study English, the language, communication. Why am I reading literature? If you have that question, here is an article in Chinese that might help you answer that question. But one thing that it does not mention is something that literature can do for everyone. Literature can help prepare for the future. You're probably what, under 25 years old? So you still have 2/3 of your life ahead of you. There are so many things you have not yet experienced, so many surprises, both good and bad, waiting for you. You don't have to go into the future unprepared. There are people who have experienced those things or similar things, and they want to share their experience with you. That's literature. If you only live your own life, you live one life. But if you read literature, you live as many lives as you can read. So hopefully by reading more literature, you can be better prepared for life events. You won't be completely prepared. Everybody's life is slightly different, but surprisingly, everybody's life is not that different. So that's something literature can help you with. Now, one popular reason for reading literature says that it can help you become a better human being. Something, empathy, understanding other people, caring about other people. That's not exactly true. Literature can help you understand other people. But does that mean it will make you care more about other people? It depends on what kind of person you are. If you are naturally sympathetic and you care about your other human beings, then yes, literature can make you a better person. But if you are a raging psychopath who will not stop for whatever you want and you will cut down anybody in your way, then literature just becomes another weapon that you can use. The more you understand other people, the more you can deal with other people. So it's literature is not 100% good. It really depends on your attitude and what you do with what you learn. And then finally, this last one is over the past couple of years, I've been posting English learning tidbits and tips to our department's Facebook page anonymously. So here's a collection of what I think are the most important posts about learning English, and you can look at that if you're interested. So as this YouTuber reminds us, if you haven't read it, then you absolutely need to read it before coming to class. Otherwise, none of this will make sense. If you don't finish the reading, you will have no idea what we're talking about in class, and it will be hard for you to take the exam. Now, all of the discussion questions are already on Moodle. So we can, what changed? Oh, okay, no, the file names are wrong, but no, everything is here. Sorry, so number 1 should be week 2, number 2 should be week. I'll change that later. So if you're reading something and you feel kind of stuck, you're not sure why you're reading this, you're not sure what is the point, you can take a look at my discussion questions, because these are questions about what I think are the important parts or the parts to pay attention to. So for example, here are next week's questions. I'm not going to ask you how old was this author, what year was it published. I'm going to ask you open-ended questions. Number 1, what do you think the point might be of this poem? And why do you think this is the point? So you can't just give an answer, you also have to explain how you got that answer based on what did you read that led you to that answer. Question 2, in this poem, why do you think the wilderness becomes no longer wild? Why or how does the jar take dominion? So this question is focused on the specific language and ideas in this poem. And there's no standard answer. You can give whatever answer you can think of as long as you can connect it to something that you have read in the text. Question 3, why do you think the red wheelbarrow of this poem is so important? Question 4, how do you think the speaker of this poem feels about eating the plums? How do you think the addressee might feel and why? In a poem, the person who talks is called the speaker. Sometimes they are talking to another person, and that other person is called the addressee. So this question is asking about their relationship and the speaker's attitude. Finally, compare the imagery in the poems by these two authors. How are they similar? How are they different? A very straightforward compare and contrast. So as you can see, all of these are open-ended questions. You don't have to worry about giving a wrong answer. As long as you can find evidence from the text to explain your answer, it's fine. Okay, the exams, a lot of exam rules. I will cover this in more detail when I introduce the midterm exam. For now, you just have to know how I will grade your exams. They'll be graded according to accuracy, logic, and source. When you give evidence from the text, the evidence has to be correct. That's accuracy. When you use that evidence to explain your answer, that explanation has to make sense. That's logic. Finally, you have to tell me, where did you find this evidence? What page number? What line number? That is the source. I will grade your exams based on these 3 elements. And your answer must have at least 4 different discontinuous pieces of specific evidence. It is an open book exam, so you must use the material. All of the other stuff. Okay, one more. If you want, you can ask AI to help you correct your grammar and spelling. But if you do more than that, you must know AI gives terrible answers. And you may not see why the answers are terrible. But I will. So it's very risky if you ask AI to answer for you. But you can ask it to correct your grammar and spelling if you want. I don't really care, but if you care, you can do that. If you do, please make sure to double check your answer again. I had a student who asked AI to correct his grammar and spelling. What he did not realize is that the AI also changed all of his page numbers. That's the source part. And so he got a very low score on that exam. So if you do ask AI to help you, please double check every single thing. And the last point, this point is very fun. So as you know, we have a new Moodle this semester. In the past, when I gave a grade for your exam, Moodle would not tell you. That's what this says. However, this semester, I was playing around with Moodle and I found this. Lesson essay graded notification. Or if you want the Chinese, 学习单元的问答题已经计分的通知. And that sounds like if you turn this on, when I give you a grade, Moodle will tell you. I don't know if that's true. We're going to find out together. Very exciting. But for now, please assume that Moodle will not tell you. So you're going to have to come back and check your score. And then I know not everyone has done essay questions before, so here are some examples answering other questions. So none of the information will help you, but the way that the answer looks like, how the person writes their answer could help you. I have included a bad example so you know what not to do. And then there is a good example under that. I think you may want to pay attention to this one, barn burning, because barn burning is something that was taught in American literature before. So I think it'll be most closely related to what you're going to be reading. Also, I wrote that one. Like some of these are student writing. Barn burning, I wrote that one. So you know it's going to be a good answer. Here's an article in Chinese about why you shouldn't copy other people's work. Here are the exams and the time frame. So each exam, as I said, you will have 1 week, right? So from the end of class until 1 week later before midnight, 1 whole week. Finally, we have extra credit. If you don't think you're going to pass, or if you just want a higher score, you can do this. And if you do a good job, if you are going to fail, I will let you pass. If you are going to pass, I will give you somewhere between, I think, 3 and 7 more points. Now, that sounds like a good deal, right? So, of course, it's not going to be easy. You can take a closer look when you have time, but for now, you should know that there is a word count. So you can only submit Microsoft Word documents, things like that. Now, in the past, some students have encountered this problem. Can you see what's wrong with this picture? How many words are highlighted? 2, right? but it says 5 words. It's counting each letter as a word. So if this happens to you, it may say 1,000 words, but in fact, it will only be around 200 words, and you won't get the extra credit. So from what I understand, this happens sometimes if you write in Google Docs and then you save it as a Microsoft Word document. So don't do that. If you do use Google Docs, copy the whole thing, open a new Microsoft Word document, and paste. Now, if this does happen to you and you see like the broken words and the word count is wrong, how do you save your essay? There's only one way that I have found. You have to open something that is not Google Docs and is not Microsoft Word, copy your essay, paste it into that thing, open a new Microsoft Word document, copy your essay from there, and then paste it into your new Microsoft Word document. Very annoying. So just try to avoid the problem in the first place. The the exam questions are also open-ended questions, just like the discussion questions. They will be new. You will not have seen them before. They will also be bigger, longer, and harder. So the best way to prepare for the exams is to join the discussion every week, to practice talking about these questions, practice finding evidence to support your answer. Okay, questions about the course introduction? All right. So let's talk about next week's poems. We're going to be reading 5 poems, 2 of them by Wallace Stevens, 3 of them by William Carlos Williams. These 2 people were writing at the beginning of the 20th century. I believe it was here, let me check. Yeah. Okay. So this was around the time before the First World War. We've entered the 20th century, technology is blooming, and the old ways of poetry seem outdated. So these 2 men thought that instead of using poems to talk about history or to talk about values or to like set an example, instead of using poetry for education, poetry should be about imagery, what you can see in your imagination. And if you do use poetry for ideas, you should put those ideas in the imagery instead of directly talking about those ideas. Wallace Stevens was an insurance agent or executive. By day, he worked in an insurance company doing very boring math-related stuff. But in the evening, he would write some of his poetry. Which tells you to be a famous poet, you don't have to be a starving genius author, right? You can be a regular person, and if you're inspired, your poetry can stand the test of history. So Stevens uses imagery to talk about ideas or to make you think about ideas. 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird is 13 very, very short stanzas that may or may not be related to blackbirds. Anecdote of the Jar. An anecdote is a very short story that you might tell at a party. Here it just means it's not something realistic. It's like a fable, 像是寓言. And it tells the story of what happens if you put a jar in the middle of the wilderness. So when you read his poems, focus on the ideas that come through the imagery. William Carlos Williams was a doctor. And in those days, a doctor did not sit in an office waiting for you to come. A doctor traveled around the neighborhood, and you can call the doctor, and the doctor would come to you to take care of you. So Stevens had a very good relationship with his neighborhood, his community. Everybody loved him. By all accounts, he was a pretty good doctor. So he also cares about the imagery of a poem, but his imagery is not used that seriously. He cares more about the image than about the idea. The idea is still important, but the imagery for him is first. So the red wheelbarrow is quite obviously about a red wheelbarrow. Wheelbarrow is it's a one wheel push cart. 单轮推车. This is just to say, could be an apology for something. But Landscape with the Fall of Icarus, this is the poem for Williams that has a bit more of the philosophy going on. Let me show you. Landscape here is a kind of painting. 风景画, I think it's called. So this poem is based on a painting. It's based on this painting. Icarus. Do you guys know that name? It's from ancient Greek mythology. Okay, let's see. How far back should I go? Okay. Zeus wanted to seduce a woman, as he often does. The woman rejected him, so he cursed her to make her fall in love with a bull, 公牛. So she has sex with the bull, gives birth to a son who is half bull, half man, the Minotaur. 牛头人身兽, something like that. The woman's husband, because of course she has a husband, loves his son, but can't bear to deal with the fact that he is a monster. So he doesn't want to kill his son, but he wants to keep his son locked away from the world. So on his island, he builds a maze. He hires a maze maker named Daedalus. No, that's not how you spell it. Daedalus. Okay, Microsoft Teams. There we go. Daedalus, this guy. Hires him to build a maze, 迷宫, and he puts his son in the middle of the maze to make sure that he can never leave the island. The problem is Daedalus made the maze, so he knows how to get out of the maze. He knows if he wants to, he could rescue the Minotaur. So the dude locks Daedalus up in a high tower. And to build this maze, Daedalus worked with his son, Icarus. So now Daedalus and Icarus are locked together in this high tower. But if you have a genius maze maker, he can probably escape from a high tower too, right? So what Daedalus does is he uses wax to create wings to fly away from the tower. And he warns his son Icarus, don't fly too close to the sun or the wax will melt. But, you know, Icarus is a young man. It's his first time flying through the air. He's excited. He goes higher and higher. And indeed, his wax wings start to melt and he falls into the sea. So this painting is called Landscape with the Fall of Icarus. You can see the landscape, right? The sea, a city, a farmer, trees, there's a boat. Where is Icarus? Can you see a guy falling into the water? Here. Okay. Here. Right here. So the point of this painting is to say, we're also focused on Greek mythology, the gods and the heroes and the historical figures. But most of history isn't about them. Those are just like 100 people. Thousands and thousands of people lead their ordinary lives, completely oblivious to all of this legend and hero stories. So that's the idea behind the painting. And then William Carlos Williams writes a poem related to this painting. So let's take a short break. When we come back, the poems are not very long. I'll read through them with you, and you can start thinking about them before next week.对对对，就是待会儿就是下课前，我会带想要的人去我的办公室，然后到这边访。这个是开就是每周讲一点点，那有一点，如果其他什么可以可以没问题，完全开出。对对对啊，不会，你要看中文资料也可以的，但是你答案要是英文。不会英文，OK。对啊，OK。对啊，会。OK。Yeah.想要翻阅纸本档案的话，前面有一个。Okay. Do you want a paper copy? I can see you next week. Or tomorrow? Are you here tomorrow? Look, I'm thinking if you want a paper copy, you can just grab that one. Oh, really? Yeah. Well, how about him? You're not going to leave early, are you? He needs to leave early. Early. Yeah, so you can follow me to my office. I'll give everybody a call.
Yeah. But the attendance, no attendance this week?
Nope, make sure to watch the rest of the class online.
Do copies today.
Hooray!
I might need a bigger backpack if I have to take, if I want to take the class.
Okay, let's take a brief look at these poems. And as I guide you through them, you can keep the discussion questions in mind. So the question for the first poem is, what do you think is the point of this poem? What is it trying to say? If you have already downloaded the course packet, this is page 14. 13 ways of looking at a blackbird. 1. Among 20 snowy mountains, the only moving thing was the eye of the blackbird. 2. I was of 3 minds, which means he couldn't make up his mind. Like a tree in which there are 3 blackbirds. Number 3. The blackbird whirled in the autumn winds. It was a small part of the pantomime. 4. A man and a woman are one. A man and a woman and a blackbird are one. 5. I do not know which to prefer, the beauty of inflections, which means changes, or the beauty of innuendos, which means suggestions. The blackbird whistling or just after. 6. Icicles filled the long window with barbaric glass. The shadow of the blackbird crossed it to and fro. The mood traced in the shadow an indecipherable cause. 7. O thin man of Haddam, why do you imagine golden birds? Do you not see how the blackbird walks around the feet of the women about you? About here means around. 8. I know noble accents and lucid, inescapable rhythms, but I know too that the blackbird is involved in what I know. 9. When the blackbird flew out of sight, it marked the edge of one of many circles. 10. At the sight of blackbirds flying in the green light, even the bawds of euphony would cry out sharply. Euphony means beautiful sounds. 11. He rode over Connecticut in a glass coach. Connecticut is a U.S. state in the Northeast. A coach is a horse-drawn carriage or like a car. Once a fear pierced him in that he mistook the shadow of his equipage for blackbirds. Equipage means equipment. 12. The river is moving. The blackbird must be flying. 13. It was evening all afternoon. It was snowing, and it was going to snow. The blackbird sat in the cedar limbs. A cedar is a kind of tall tree. So again, the discussion question is, what is the point of this poem? The next poem, The Anecdote of the Jar, also by Wallace Stevens. Anecdote of the Jar. I placed a jar in Tennessee, which is a U.S. state, and round it was upon a hill. It made the slovenly wilderness surround that hill. Slovenly means messy. The wilderness rose up to it and sprawled around, no longer wild. The jar was round upon the ground and tall and of a port in air. So it's saying it looks like a skyport. It took dominion everywhere. Dominion here means control. The jar was gray and bare. It did not give of bird or bush, which means it did not produce, or it did not connect with bird or bush, like nothing else in Tennessee. So the question here is, why do you think the wilderness becomes no longer wild? Why and how does the jar take dominion, take control? So these two poems of Wallace Stevens, you can feel the philosophy in these poems. Now let's look at the poems by William Carlos Williams. The Red Wheelbarrow. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow, glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. Glaze is the reflective layer that you add to pottery at the very end, 上釉. That's it, that's the poem. So it's almost 100% imagery. So the question here is, why is that red wheelbarrow so important? Right? It says so much depends upon this red wheelbarrow. Why? The next poem by William Carlos Williams, This Is Just to Say. I have eaten the plums. Plums 是什么？桃子吗？ That were in the icebox. An icebox is an early kind of refrigerator that doesn't use power. You would have to buy a block of ice every morning to put inside the icebox. So I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox and which you were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me, they were delicious, so sweet and so cold. That's the poem. So the question here is, how do you think the speaker of this poem feels about eating the plums? Are they sorry? Are they really sorry? And how do you think the addressee might feel? The person that the speaker is talking to when they receive this poem, how do you think they might feel? And why? Finally, the last poem, Landscape with the Fall of Icarus. According to Bruegel, the painter who painted that painting, when Icarus fell, it was spring. A farmer was plowing his field. The whole pageantry of the year was awake, tingling near the edge of the sea, concerned with itself, sweating in the sun that melted the wings' wax. Insignificantly off the coast, there was a splash, quite unnoticed. This was Icarus drowning. So the fifth question is to compare these two people's use of imagery. How are they similar? How are they different? I think it's safe to say that this last poem is the most philosophical poem that we're reading by William Carlos Williams. So that could be one way to compare the two poets. When WCW uses poetry for philosophy, How is that similar to or different from when Wallace Stevens does that? And then you can go back and think about, is there any kind of philosophy in the first two WCW poems? Okay, so please reread these poems and think about them to prepare for discussion next week. Questions? Okay, that's it for today. If you want a paper copy of the handout, please follow me to my office.